With all of the AI coming into the space, it gives an advantage to the do it yourself investor that thinks that they want to scale up their technology stack to manage their rental properties better, whether it's a short-term rental or a long-term rental. That's what we're going to dive into today is the 5 things that I think you need to be thinking about when you think through your tech stack or the 5 core processes as an investor when it comes to long-term rentals. So if it was me and I was just managing my own rental properties, obviously the first thing you need is some sort of CRM or area way to manage all of the rental leads that you're getting. So ideally, the same place that you can receive interest from your rental properties would also be a same area that you could take them through the entire funnel from interest in a rental property to booking the showing to seeing the showing, getting the application, and maybe even signing the lease. So some sort of software or system that's going to help you capture that. So some of the bigger names out there like Zillow might have something where you can sort of take them through a full funnel. Now it could be broken down between the showing being separate from applications and separate from leasing, or the applications and leasing might tie into something. But again, frictionless experience is what is important. That's what we have, sort of an easy one, all in one place where they can go through the whole funnel. So that's going to be the first thing is some sort of CRM, which is your client relationship manager in regards to rental leads and taking them through that full stack, making sure it's efficient, very seamless and easy for them to go and push through to the next step. That way it decreases your time on market of vacancy and just makes it easy to push them through to the next step. The other part of it being the application side, right? So they see the rental property, the applications, signing the lease, and sort of the next steps and your forms. So you have your CRM, you're taking through applications, leasing. So next is kind of like your paperwork, right? So whether it's signing the lease, any addendums that you have, or forms that you need in the future, like 3-day notices, 7-day notices to cure, modification to a lease agreement, wherever you're hosting the actual documents. So ideally, your software that once they get pushed in from application to leasing, your sort of e-signature side, you're going to need another component for e-signing documents, right? So that might be able to be tied into the core product that we just talked about before, but you may have to have a separate area or process for actually signing documents and your library of documents. So you might be able to find some stuff online. Obviously, best to consult with an attorney in your market to find the right forms, but you'll be able to come up with some paperwork. Obviously, the lease being the strongest and thing that you want to spend the most time on thinking through what to include in that. But all the other things that you can run into, there's probably over 100 forms that we have for all sorts of crazy scenarios and different things that can come into play. Addendums that we might want to have them sign on the front end with the lease. So sort of your lease, you might have a resident handbook that kind of talks about rules and guidelines that you might want to have as part of the lease, but actually spread out into a second document, pet addendums, anything else like that you may want to have. So you're going to need your CRM, you're going to need some sort of documentation, e-signature software. And the other couple pieces that we would like you to think about is maintenance, right? Maintenance is at least 50% of what we do, whether it's turnovers, whether it's just improvements on a property that an owner wants to do, or maintenance submitted by a resident. So it could be very overwhelming, especially when you get to a few properties of managing all of that. So ideally, you have a system where your vendors can be there. Ideally, it's a system that you could pay your vendors through and manage your work ticket items, your work orders. So, having a place where a resident could submit them, ideally that would be the same place that you could manage it. Ideally, really that would be the same place that you could pay the vendors, but you're sort of tracking from intake to completed might be a separate area from how you actually pay your vendors. But that would be, again, another thing that you have to think about is how am I going to pay the vendors that I work with? And ideally, again, that also goes into bookkeeping and statements for yourself to review. So instead of using Zelle or these here and there sort of accounting things that are just going to be a nightmare to clean up later, having a system that there's good tracking behind invoices being paid and accounted for to tie them to your rental properties. So maintenance piece, yeah, it's the intake to completion, but also the sort of the bookkeeping and payment side is something that you're going to need to think about. And the last 2 things that we'll touch on today is inspections. So before a tenant moves in, throughout the tenant's lease, when they move out, or before renewal, like what key points do you care about having an inspection done? Great to do one, obviously, before a tenant moves in. Also great to have a tenant do their own after they move in, so that when it comes time for security deposits, you have that accounted for. So what software are you going to use to do the inspection if you're doing it? What software are you going to use for the tenant to do their own if you are going to have that option? And where are you going to store it? And how can you easily compare a report from a year ago to the report that you just took. So some sort of inspection software to have documents, something ideally that would do more than just photos so that you can have text and other stuff within one single area. So some sort of photo capturing ability, but also note taking ability all in one space. And lastly, talking about the move out process and move in process. So, move in process, collecting utilities, copies of renter's insurance, like a little bit of a checklist of, pretty much what you're going to require from every tenant. Where are you going to store that information? Some sort of management software, some sort of filing system. Same thing for the move out, right? Tenant's gonna, the lease is gonna be up. You're not renewing them. They decide to move out. What's the expectation for utilities? What's the expectation for cleanliness? What's the expectation for security deposit return? All that sort of stuff. So some of that happens for every tenant, and just creating a little bit of the process for that. Ideally, you find a system that sends out that information automatically or with your review, but it's automatically generated, and you're still pushing, send to the tenant. So, how to set up utilities. Maybe you're providing the utility providers in a certain area where the property is at, make it easier for the tenant. What days are, trash schedule, all that sort of stuff, right? So it could change depending on location, but an automated workflow a little bit for some of this stuff. So you're not always having to rely on memory, or if you hire an employee to help you with some of this stuff, you're able to have your knowledge somewhere documented and it's not just stuck in your head. So hopefully that's helpful. Some things to think about for do-it-yourself investors. A lot of the technology coming out may allow you to do it better. Just be cautious of software creep when you're starting to add all this stuff up and comparing it to, what you could just pay a property management company to do. Thanks for watching.